Hey, good evening, Pastor Mary. It's Monday. I didn't forget you. I know I'm a couple minutes late, but I had to get back on my iPad. So I hope some of you will join me tonight. I hope you remember that I said I would do tonight. If not, I guess you will be maybe catching this tomorrow or tomorrow night when you realize that I'm not on Tuesday night. Sorry. I thought I had looked at my hair before I came to sit down. So, today is Monday. I have to pay attention. I don't even know what day it is. 29th of June. And it just so happens that it's the 50th anniversary of women in the ELCA being ordained. Now, that's a predecessor church. I mentioned it, I think last week, one night, or the week before, about the American Lutheran Church, the Lutheran Church in America, and the American Evangelical Lutheran Church all came together. Hello, Diane. All came together. I know there's a couple others of you on there, but it's not popping up your names. Sorry. So those three bodies were the predecessors, and 50 years of women being ordained, 40 years of women of color being ordained, and 10 years of LGBTQIA plus individuals being able to serve freely. And so today is the actual date. I was trying to look up the information about it. Hey, Sarah. Hey, Betty. Good evening. So let's see. In 1970, American Lutherans voted to ordain women, joining several European Lutheran churches which already had done so. And I should say, I love history, and when I was in seminary, I took, we took American church history, we took early church history, we took middle and Reformation church history, but I also took women in the early church history, and I took women in the early and middle ages, and then I also took another class on women in American church history, because I just really love church history. And I found it interesting that before women were ordained, the way that women could really serve in a role that was close to being equal to a pastor, if not equal to a pastor, was being a missionary. And there were many women that served as missionaries abroad and overseas. So 1970 was the year. My brain, sorry, we are finishing up the house tonight that we had been living in for 60 years. 60 years. Oh my gosh, my brain is just a mess. That we've been living in for the last 6 years. And tomorrow is the checkout, and it popped up. I knew the 50th anniversary of women being ordained in the Lutheran Church was coming. Hang on, it didn't give me what I wanted to tell you. I was trying to remember. Elizabeth is the woman's first name, and I did not realize till looking at that, or I forgot, that it was 10 years later before the first woman of color was ordained in a predecessor Lutheran church body. So it's a big deal. And today our bishop had put a note up and was listing a number and inviting others to list. And several listed Pastor Katie, and several of you listed me. And thank you so much. I'm very honored to be your pastor. I just can't even tell you what a privilege it is for me to be your pastor. It's a great blessing, and you all are just amazing. So I'm trying to see. Okay. Elizabeth A. Platts was the first woman ordained in the Lutheran Church in America on November 22nd, 1970. And then I believe she's still alive. I know she was for the 45th anniversary. Today, the proportion of active clergy in the ELCA of women as clergy is 35%, compared to 21% in 2000. In the past 5 years, now let me see, this was 5 years ago. So this was a release from 5 years ago. It said in the past 5 years, so it'd be in the past 10 years, 49% of people ordained were women, and in the ELCA's 8 seminaries, the number of women and men preparing for ministry is about equal. Lutheran women clergy serve in a variety of roles, including campus ministers, chaplains, and missionaries. At that time, 5 years ago, 9 of the ELCA's 65 synod bishops are female, but I know that there are more than that now. And at that time, 86 women hold the title of senior pastor, in contrast to 456 men in the same role. So I was going to share just a little bit about my journey to becoming a pastor, because I was not raised in the Lutheran tradition. It was never my thought or intent to ever be a pastor. But when I moved to Kansas City after college, I knew I wanted to join the Lutheran Church. I had been searching for grace, and I found it in a wonderful church. It was in my college town, Kirksville, Missouri. And it was a Missouri Synod church that was very open and very broad. And when I say that, and some of you may know what I mean when I say this, but they had Seminex interns. And Seminex was the seminary in exile, which was the split in 1974 in the Missouri Synod Lutheran Seminary in St. Louis, where there was a walkout by about 90% of the faculty and the same amount of students left. And the argument was over the inerrancy of the Bible, because or the infallibility, the inerrancy, that there's no mistakes in the Bible. And we say that the Bible is divinely inspired, God inspired, but that it was written by human beings, and that there are there's some historical facts that, like there's 2 different times Moses dies, there's 2 different creation stories, and 2 totally, completely different orders. So anyway, that was what the breakup was over. And so this church in Kirksville had interns from Seminex, the seminary in exile. And I was searching. I loved the tradition I was part of, but I didn't feel I fit anymore. And I happened to live in a Catholic house, and where some of the people who lived there were former Catholics and some were Catholic, and we would have monthly dinners with the Lutheran campus ministry that was in Kirksville. And they were Missouri Synod, but they were open and welcoming to all. That was a really cool church. And we'd go to the dinners, and I got to know the intern and got talking to him, and I got to know their pastor. And their pastor really talked to me about the foundation of grace by faith, grace through faith in the Lutheran tradition. And that really excited me, because that's really what I was looking for. So when I moved to Kansas City after college, to one of my best friends and then another friend of hers, they were nurses. We were all roommates. And the friend who became my friend, Missy, grew up in that Lutheran church in Kirksville, which I visited a number of times. They had the Green ELW, women were in leadership. And so they weren't the typical, especially at that time, Missouri Synod congregation. Anyway, when we moved to Kansas City, we visited a church and a Lutheran church, and it was okay, but I knew I really wanted to learn more about the Lutheran churches. And so we visited a church called Atonement Lutheran Church in Overland Park, Kansas. It's still there. It's a very large congregation. I didn't join it because it was large. I joined it because they gave away 25% of their budget to social service agencies and nonprofit agencies. So they put their money where their mouth was. And I have always been moved by helping others. And I loved the church, so I joined there. Well, they had a second career intern named Sally Farenthold. And Sally was an amazing person. She was really the mentor and the inspiration for me. And I was very involved with her, working on issues of hunger and the social ministry at the church. And even though I was taking social work classes and working and trying to figure out the rest of my life after college, Sally became not only my pastor, but she became really a mentor and became a friend to me. And Sally, after doing her internship there, she got ordained and became one of the associate pastors at that congregation. So we worked together for a number of years. Sally really encouraged me, mentored me. She invited me to a Hunger Action Task Force, which was pre-EOCA, and I knew a lot about hunger work because I'd been involved since I was a teenager, doing the crop walk, church rural overseas walk in my community. And at the meeting, somebody said, well, you seem to know a lot. Why don't you be the head of our group? And I was like 23, 24, and I was like, okay, I'll do it. Well, all of that changed my life. Sally sent me on a trip to Mexico. It was put on by the American Lutheran Church for our area. Our area was Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, and Colorado. It was as big, if not bigger geographically than the Senate here. And so she was supposed to go, but she got asked by the mayor of Kansas City to go to Africa because at that time, as has been other times, there was really terrible famine across Africa. And she was on a task force for the city of Kansas City involved with trying to help the people of Africa. So she already was going to go to Mexico and had her way paid. So she offered it to me and said, your way is paid. Would you go in my place? I'm going to Africa. And so, of course, I said, yes, I will go. And my life was changed by that experience. I came back wanting even more deeply to be involved in making a difference in other people's lives. And I wound up working as the assistant to the executive director of the Interfaith Peace Alliance in Kansas City. And I was very involved in that. I was very involved in my church. I was taking social work classes and thought I was going to become a social worker. When Sally one day mentioned to me, or it was either Sally or another friend, but they said, gee, your name has been floated around to consider being on the church council. Well, this church is in still one of the wealthiest counties in the whole country. I was not wealthy, never been wealthy. Lived in an apartment, lived in friends' houses, rented a room. And then several people said to me, you ought to think about being a pastor. We think you'd be a really great pastor. And I really believe that God speaks to us in a variety of ways through scripture, but also through other people. And I felt like that was something I needed to listen to. So I had a number of friends that were young adult pastors in our Kansas City that I hung out with, that I was friends with. And so I decided that I would interview all my friends, male and female, and I had very basic questions. And my questions were, 1, do you like being a pastor? 2, what do you like about it? 3, what's difficult about it? And 4, would you do it again if you could do it all over again? The men all said, yes, it's great. I love it. I'm glad I did it, and I'd do it again. The women, and I interviewed 4 or 5 women, all said, this is the toughest thing you will ever do. I was single at the time. I was not dating anybody. They said, you may never get married. For some reason, men don't like to marry women that are pastors. So you may never get married. So you better be okay with being single. And some of them said, I'm not sure I would do this again because it was so tough being a woman pastor. So I thought about all of that, but I really felt a tug on my heart that God was calling me to serve. And I applied for seminary, but I didn't have a lot of money. And I was not telling my parents until I knew I was accepted, because I felt like if I told my mom and dad that I was applying for seminary and I didn't get in, then my dad would never let me forget it, and I'd hear it the rest of my life. So I told God, I said, look, and I know I shouldn't do this, but I did. I said, God, if you really want me to be a pastor, you're going to have to clear the way. One, I only applied to one seminary in Chicago because I wanted the inner city experience because I grew up in a rural area and I knew rural life very well. I didn't want to go too far away from home. I had family in Chicago. It was drivable to go home, and I loved the seminary. It was the only seminary I visited, and I absolutely loved it. So I said to God, okay, here's the deal. I've only applied to Chicago. So if you want me to be a pastor, I have to get in, and there has to be money for me to go to seminary. Because I don't have the money. I'm not asking my parents. So that's the deal, God. And I will tell you this. This has rarely happened in my life. I don't know if I have many other times I can say this, but the day the letter came, and I mean, I had waited months for it. The day the letter came, I knew it was coming that day. I hadn't thought it any other day, but I just had this instinct that the letter had come. And the letter had come. And it said, congratulations, you've been accepted to seminary. And then the seminary, I was poor enough. I was in my late 20s. I'd worked for 5 years and taken social work classes and been at my church for 5 years. And I'm really glad I did that because I think that really helped me a lot to live in the world, pay my bills, learn how to be an adult, live on my own, figure out, all the things you figure out as an adult. And then the seminary, I was poor enough that they gave me enough money for tuition. And then my church was gracious enough that anyone who went to our church, and we had a number of people who went to seminary because they were very encouraging of people about seminary. They paid our tuition too. So the money they gave went to pay my housing. So God had provided through these wonderful people, through my seminary that had accepted me, and my church that believed in me, and so I went to seminary. Now, will I say the road has been easy? No, I have almost stopped being a pastor at least twice when I just was. It was just hard to keep going, and I honestly, when we moved back to Atlanta in 2014, we had left the church we'd served for 8.5 years in Illinois, and we made the decision to leave, and Christmas Eve was our last service there of 2012. I did chaplaincy program in the February to April of 2013 and was wanting to start to work towards being a hospice chaplain because I really felt called to that, but wasn't sure that I felt called to serve in the church anymore. But I would fill in at churches and lead worship and preach. And I remember one time the organist at this small church in Chatham, Illinois, who after service was over, said to me, you need to keep being a pastor. And that was really, really encouraging to me because I was so down. I was so tough. I wasn't sure I was going to do it again. Anyway, we came back here at the end of July. It'll be 6 years. We moved back because David got a call at Conyers. And I was, that fall, they all left me. We got here on a Friday, registered them at school. Saturday, the truck came. We unpacked. Sunday, David had church. And Monday, the boys went to school. And I was left alone with all the stuff in the house. And I started to volunteer at David's church. I worked with the kids, with the preschool program. I did that for 3 years. I worked with the Mother's Day Out program, and I absolutely loved it. I volunteered 1 or 2 days a week, sometimes filled in at the preschool. But in February of 2015, Michelle Angelet from the Synod staff at the time called me and said, hey, do you live in Gwinnett County? Now, if you don't live down here, you don't know Gwinnett, but I said, no, I don't live in Gwinnett. I actually lived like 45 minutes away from Gwinnett. She goes, well, there's an interim position that's open and we need somebody half-time. Would you consider taking it? I'm like, well, when do I need to start? Oh, 10 days. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. By then, I'd had enough time. I'd had 2013, 2014 to do some healing. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And that was the road back for me. And I have to say that doing interim ministry and then getting to do hospice chaplaincy are the things that have really kept me in ministry. Because the thing that we don't often talk about, today we celebrate women. But many women, it's a longer time between a first call and a second call for women to get a call. It's harder for women of color to get a call. It's harder for women who are of the LGBTQIA group. It's harder for them to get a call because churches don't have to interview you. And oftentimes churches aren't open to women. And I can't tell you, and I don't say this stuff just to a pity party, but I would be retired and wealthy if I had $1 for every person that said to me, well, you're the first woman pastor I've ever met. Well, you're the first woman pastor. Well, I don't know what I think about women pastors. I even remember when we lived here and I was up for jury duty in DeKalb County. It was probably 1999 or 2000. And when I was in the jury pool and had to share what my work was, the judge said to me, you're the first woman pastor I've ever met. I want to say, get in line, buddy. There's plenty of them back there. And I will also say that it's very hard when you are the first woman pastor for people to meet because, and please don't take offense because I don't mean it to any of you, but I have found that often if a male pastor isn't very good, they just say, well, that pastor wasn't very good. But if they meet a woman pastor and they're not very good or they don't like them, then they think all women pastors are just like that pastor. And it can be really hard to have a fair shot when you're a woman pastor, whether you follow a great woman pastor or not. But I want to give thanks today for Pastor Katie Posh. I think that's the right way to say it. Pastor Katie, I always admired Pastor Katie when we lived down here in Atlanta. She served 27 years at St. John Griffin. She laid an amazing path for another woman like me to be able to come along and to serve with such great people. And I know that we don't all agree on everything, and we're not going to all agree on everything. And I know there are days that you may not like me, and that's okay. But I will tell you that coming to St. John has blessed me beyond compare, just as every interim that I have served has blessed me so many ways and restored my hope and just given me what I needed to know that this is what I was to continue to do. Because I said if I quit ministry, I was going to baking school and I was going to become a pastry chef because I like baking that much. Even though I don't get to bake much in the summer. But I bake a lot of Christmas and birthdays and holidays and stuff like that. So anyway, that's a little bit of my story. But I will say that the road for women is still not easy, even though we have many more women bishops. We've had many more women as head pastors. I still meet people, and not Lutheran, meet people all the time who say to me, you're the first woman pastor I've ever met. And I have just learned, well, that's okay. I can be the first one. I'm not going to be your last, but I'll be okay being your first. So happy anniversary to the 50th ordination of women in the ELCA church bodies before. Happy 40th anniversary to women of color being ordained. Happy 10th anniversary to women of the LGBTQIA plus group being approved to be able to be ordained. God has called you all, and there are more women called. And you may know a young woman, you may know an older woman. I've known women to get ordained in their 60s. I've known women to get ordained in their 70s. I was in my 30s. And my classmates, we had 5 classmates who left their spouses behind in another state to come to seminary, and several of them were women who were been married for 25 plus years, and they came and became pastors, and it changed their life. And my life has been changed by serving God in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. And I'm grateful for so many women. I named Pastor Katie and Pastor Sally. Pastor Connie Winter Yulberg, who married me and my husband David with her husband, Pastor Steve. Pastor Karen, who I knew in Kansas City. So many. There's just so many women. Thank you, Sharon. I appreciate it. And I'm grateful. I have to share one more thing, is that when I think I've shared this with some of you, when we were kids, my brother and I would play Mass. And of course, my brother was the priest and I was the person getting communion. But we always thought Tim was going to be Father Tim with the pizza parlor. It wound up, we always thought Tim was going to be in ministry. It wound up that I went to seminary before him, but he is now an American Baptist minister. And he has also been a hospice chaplain like me, and he's been a chaplain. I've just done chaplain work in the hospital, but he served as a chaplain, served as a hospital chaplain, served as a hospice chaplain. We have shared that throughout our lives, being in ministry together, being called by God. And our two younger brothers have remained Catholic, and we're a very ecumenical family. And I'll share one more thing, and that is, so when I found out I was accepted to seminary, I went home, and I knew I had to tell my parents. And the night I was going to tell them, my youngest brother, Ted, was receiving an honor at the awards ceremony at our old high school, West Pike. So I didn't want to say anything until after that was over, because it was my brother's special night, and I wanted, it to be about him. But the next night was my Aunt Betty and my Uncle Tony's 40th wedding anniversary party. And I was kind of bursting at the seams to tell my parents, because they knew nothing, because I hadn't told them anything. And my parents, we got home from my brother's, the award ceremony, and my parents were like, well, we're going to go out. I'm like, well, wait, before you go out. And they're like, well, what? I'm like, I have to tell you something. And I told my parents. And my parents were in shock. Because my mom, if you've heard me say, my mom studied to be a nun for 6 months. And my mom said, what did I ever do to deserve this? But my mom was there when I was ordained, and my mom and dad were very supportive of me. And I'll be forever grateful that they came when we were installed at Resurrection Lutheran in Bloomington. And they came back when both my boys received First Communion. And my parents were very, very supportive, even though they were in shock the first time I told them that I was going to seminary. So anyway, that's my story of how I came to feel called by God. And I will say there are times and days that I don't feel called. And you may have heard me share that when I was in seminary, I had a lot of doubts and questions. And I talked to one of my professors who I thought the world of, and I said, do you ever doubt your call? And this was Professor J. Rochelle, who is now Father Gregory of the Orthodox Christian Church. And he looked at me and he said, Mary, there's not a week goes by that I don't doubt my call, which gave me great comfort, because there's a lot of times where it's very difficult and very lonely. But I wouldn't trade it for the world. I wouldn't trade it. I love you all, especially those of you that have been part of any church I've served. I'm grateful to you, and I'm thankful to have done ministry with you, and I look forward to whatever time I have. I have a 2-year term call now with St. John, and we hope that it will be many more years past that. But I'm grateful for all the time that I have now at St. John, and for the people there, and for the work God has called us to do together. It's not just God calling me, it's God calling all of us. And we're all called to serve in our lives, in our work, in our home, and we're called to serve together because we believe in the priesthood of all believers, that all are called. I am not more special or set apart. I'm just a pastor. I'm just a person. And I'm thankful and I'm humbled by God every day and grateful to be able to serve. So happy 50th anniversary to the women. May there be many, many more great years to come. May all the women I know feel the support they need as pastors, and for the women who are going to seminary, May they have great mentors like I did and be encouraged. Thank you for Pastor Nahali, who serves with my husband at Epiphany, who is such an amazing, wonderful woman. Thank you for Pastor Karen Stevenson. Thank you for Pastor Amy Figg. I'm forgetting your new married name. Thank you for Pastor Patty Axel, Pastor Jill Henning, Pastor Beverly Shaw, Pastor Beverly Brown, Pastor, I'm going blank. But I've known so many wonderful women ministers, and I'm so grateful for all of you, and I'm grateful for all the support and all the love through the years. And I pray that we will continue to be able to do great ministry together for many years to come. Thank you, Sarah. I don't have any new prayer requests tonight. The last I knew, I'd shared about, let me just look a minute. I would ask for prayers for our travel, safety as we go. We leave on Wednesday morning. We're driving all the way to Hannibal, Missouri, which is a 12 to 14 hour drive, depending. I'm praying we don't hit bad traffic or accidents, actually, because we'll probably hit traffic. We go through Atlanta, Chattanooga, Nashville, around St. Louis, and then from St. Louis, it's 100 miles north of there. So I just pray for safe travel, and then we will be with my family through to July 5th. We head over to Bloomington July 5th, just for the night. Then we go to Michigan for the Monday through Friday. We'll celebrate our 27th wedding anniversary on July 10th in Michigan with friends. We'll be getting together with some friends. We travel back to Bloomington on July 11th for several days. Then we head back to my mom's house, where I will officiate at my dear friend Hazel's mom's graveside service and officiate at my dear friend Carolyn's wedding to Craig on Saturday, July 18th. And then my brother Tim and I will drive back on July 19th, a U-Haul with some stuff for my mom's house. So, Savannah, I see you're on here. I pray you're having a good summer, even though I know you didn't get to go to camp. I know it's not what you was expecting, but I just pray that you get to go back to camp and serve again real soon. We continue to pray for Lisa Maples. They're trying to get her blood pressure even now. That's been a problem, but she's doing better in other ways. So we just continue to pray for her and pray that she will get to go home soon. We also pray for Catherine Campbell, who lost her only companion, her cat, and is very lonely without her, and she's missing her very much. I've talked to her several times in the last few days, and her cat died Saturday night. So please keep Catherine in your prayers. If you're in the Griffin area tomorrow and you want to have communion, come over between 1 and 3. Please wear your mask. We will physically distance, not socially, as you've heard me say, because we all need to stay socially close, but we will keep our physical distance from each other. And for those of you who I will not see in Georgia, I wish you all a very happy 4th of July. Hope to see family and cousins even at a distance while we are back in the Midwest, but we are going to do our best to stay healthy and safe. There will be no more devotions at night until I return. Probably I'll do a devotion on Wednesday, July 22nd, because that'll be my first day back in the office. Like I said, I will share pictures or little video from time to time on our trip. And I'll just post them up on our church Facebook page, so look for them. There will be worship every Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern time, and then after at 11 o'clock will be Zoom coffee hour, and you'll probably, whatever email you get will work for all of those. I'll have to check with Gail about that tomorrow so that you can, we had a good crowd come together yesterday for Zoom coffee hour. It was really nice to see everybody, and we really enjoyed it. So I hope you all are doing well. I wish you a very happy and safe 4th of July. I pray that everybody keeps their distance And keep wearing those masks. You're protecting you and other people by doing that. So now receive God's blessing. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you with favor and give you peace. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God's blessings to you. May you have either a good night or a good day or both, depending on when you watch this. Happy 4th of July. Blessings to you all, sending my love out. And I will look forward to seeing you all in the very near future. And looking forward, hopefully, to seeing family, several of them who are on tonight when we are back in the Midwest. Take care. Good night.